The government now says it will cover the cost of replacing flammable cladding on 166 privately owned tower blocks in England. Much of the work has been delayed by disputes between leaseholders and freeholders about who should pay to replace cladding on their flats, similar to that was used on Grenfell Tower. Well, ministers have acknowledged that delay was causing stress and worry for residents, as Sarah Campbell now reports.
Expert after expert told the inquiry into the Grenfell fire that the aluminium composite cladding which covered the tower block was why the fire spread so quickly and led to such devastating loss of life. In the aftermath, work was carried out on some buildings, such as these in North London, to remove similar cladding. But the government insisted owners would have to pay the bill for the replacement cladding themselves, and so many didn't. Now that's changed.
The pace of change has not been fast enough. Many developers have done the right thing, have stepped in, and we expect them to maintain those commitments and how they've done so. But ultimately, what's been driving me is that sense of public safety and indeed the interests of those living in those buildings.
After the Grenfell fire in 2017, 176 privately owned tower blocks in England were identified as having similar aluminium cladding. Since then, replacement work has been carried out on just 10 of those buildings. The government has now pledged £200 million to cover the replacement costs on the remaining 166 buildings which still have the Grenfell-type cladding. It will come as a relief for leaseholders, who in some cases have been told they would have to bear the costs of replacing the cladding.
It's been incredibly stressful. It's taken its toll on myself, on a number of other leaseholders. Obviously, we're living in an unsafe building. We've had these huge costs placed upon our heads as well. And to be quite honest with you, like I say, the stress is insurmountable at the moment for us.
While the government's change of heart has been welcomed, questions are being asked as to whether £200 million will be enough.
Of course we welcome this funding. It's one step in the right direction. There's a lot more that needs to be done. And why on earth did we have to leave 40,000 people in private blocks, not knowing what was going to happen with their lives, turning down job opportunities, delaying getting married for 2 years? Why on earth did the government do that? It's morally reprehensible that they didn't act sooner.
Building owners have 3 months to apply for the government money. Until the cladding is replaced, thousands of people will continue to live in fear that their tower block could suffer a catastrophic fire. Sarah Campbell, BBC News.
Well, let's discuss this now with the architect and fire safety expert Sam Webb, who is the co-founder of Tower Blocks UK. It's a network for people with concerns about tower block housing safety, and joins us from Cambridge. Thanks very much indeed for being with us. So a change of heart from the government on this. Do you welcome that?
Yes, we do. But as your last speaker said, why has it taken 2 years? And this is only part of the problem. There are a number of other buildings clad in other types of cladding, such as that used at Leasehold House, which was involved in a terrible fire in 2009. That's 10 years ago. And the warnings were put out then. If this happens in the middle of the night, the death toll, which at Leasehold House was 6, would be 10 or 12 times as high because people would be asleep. And nothing is being done about that type of cladding.
So you're saying this doesn't go far enough, and are you also saying this £200 million that essentially the government needs to spend a lot more money than that?
Yes. I mean, there are other buildings as well that we've discovered in our research, large panel system buildings. That is the Ronan Point type of construction, and there are a lot of those. Some of them have been overclad, some have had gas supplies fitted in them, and in some cases the piping for the mains gas runs in the gap behind the insulation and the wall of the building, the outside wall of the building, and that's the gap that you actually had in Grenfell Tower. So if there's a fire there which sets the cladding, outside cladding, on fire, what happens to the gas piping that's in a space between that cladding and the building?
So you're really saying that this isn't just about cladding, it's also about other aspects of tower blocks. It's about the location of gas supplies, it's about fire safety doors and so on.
Yes. In the 1980s, when I was investigating Ronan Point, and I worked with Francis Clark, who's one of the co-founders of Tower Blocks UK, with me, we were asked to look at lots of blocks of flats, not just in London, but all over the country. What struck us was the poor state of the common areas, like broken fire doors, fire doors which didn't actually shut properly in some cases, some that were missing completely. Now, that is something which exists now. After the Lakanal house fire, it was discovered incidentally through the BBC and Inside Housing magazine, that in London and throughout the UK, fire risk assessments weren't properly being carried out by local authorities and building owners. That puts everybody in those buildings at risk.
Okay, very good to talk to you and get your analysis. Thank you very much, Sam Webb there, architect and fire safety expert.